can't get it any closer. Yeah, that's all the cord we have. Can we change the font and go bigger on the font? Oh, okay. All right. Well, there's nobody behind me. We have a really high tech solution, and that's to bring your table closer to the people. You want this under the? You want this under the table? I will pick somebody. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper. Tell them when you're ready. Yeah. The bathroom, if you look to the left of that door, right there, and I could even see the spot. Is this on here? Okay. Well, I think we're about ready to begin, so if you want to find a seat, and Dawn will lead us on. I'll let you introduce yourself and.
Is the sound? Yeah, there we go. Do I need this up here? Because I'm afraid I might knock it down. Are we ready as far, just tell me if you're live or not live. You are. Oh, wow. Okay, that was quick. So before we start, there are lots of resources back here. The whole table on the end is a bunch of free books and DVDs that are donated from friends of mine if you're interested in any of those things. And also, I would like to have back on the table a sign-up sheet. This is for a plant walk that we are going to do down in the Newport area. And the reason I'm doing this is because I get so many requests wherever I go to come to people's personal homes and do plant walks, and I can't do it. I can't get to everybody's homes. So we're planning, friends of mine have lots and lots of acreage, and so they have graciously said that we can do a plant walk there. We will also have a naturopathic doctor there and different demonstrations on poultices and how to use the plants and things like that. So if you are interested in more information on that, there will be an email coming out. Just please put your name on here and your email on that. And we will put that back on. Would you be wonderful and put that on that table? Sure. Thank you. So you can sign up back there. And then also a couple of other announcements. I have recently made a couple of friends. There's a lady here named Esther, and she has a YouTube site. So if you see her running around with a camera, her site is called Esther's Eden, and she's in Athol, and her goal is to educate people on living in North Idaho and homesteading and gardening and all sorts of things like that. She's going to be doing an interview with me here in a couple of weeks. And if you want to talk to her, she'll be back here too. And then also Tony is here. Where's Tony? Raise your hand. He is with the, your website again is Hammer Ridge Homestead. And he is known as the Mushroom Man up here in Bonners Ferry. So if you've never known, sorry, but if you want to know about how to grow mushrooms, he is the guy to talk to. He'll be back here too. All right. So I only have one more class this year, and you can see it on the screen there in Priest River if you're interested in that. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. Why do we garden these days? More like, why do we not? With everything that's been crazy going on in the world lately, and if anybody was shocked when they went down to Winco a couple years ago and there was nothing in the store hardly, people are really, really interested in gardening right now. This is just a popular class, a popular topic. We need to really start thinking about how to take care of our families and our kids and how to grow our own food. And so I've always been a gardener. I grew up in a garden, so this is just kind of natural to me. I'm a teacher by trade, and so now I teach adults instead of children. I moved out here about 9 years ago. I'm from the East. And so I started gardening, and it was way different than being back east where it's really warm. And so I had to kind of relearn everything. And when friends of mine started hearing about what I was doing and seeing my results, they said, well, you need to start teaching classes. And so I've been to Spokane and Portland and, I don't know, different places teaching classes probably for about 6 or 7 years in this area. And then I started doing the winter gardening classes, and that'll be part 2 if you hang around for part 2. And I'll tell you more about that as we go. But let's jump on in here. I'm kind of a simple person. I live on a budget, as probably most of you do too, and so I try to keep everything as simple and easy as possibly can be. A lot of people think that if you're going to garden, do a garden or whatever, it has to be really fancy and you have to have all this expensive stuff, and you do not. So this is my display up here to show you, okay? You need pots. You need something to grow your seeds in, okay? And by the way, this is Gardening 101, so this is simple. This is, because I never know, I'm always talking to a variety of people, and so I'm starting at the very beginning, like put the seed in the pot type thing, okay, and then we'll get more advanced. So you have to have some pots, you have to have some dirt, you have to have some tools and water and sunshine, okay? So containers. Just get containers that you have already at home, okay? This is my favorite container. This is a tofu tub, just because it's shallow and very easy to start seedlings in. You know, these are, you know, mushrooms or whatever from the grocery store, so these didn't cost anything. They came with the food. This is a juice jug. So literally cups, whatever you have, you can start seeds in. So keep it simple, okay? But just remember, whatever you're using, you need to have holes in for drainage, because your seeds will rot if you don't have some type of drainage in your container. And the other thing I recommend is get a good potting mix. I'm not saying you have to have this one particularly, okay? But get a seed starting mix. Don't just go outside and dig up a pile of dirt and put it, unless it's good, you know, compost that you've been working on for a while, that's different. But spend a little bit of money and get some good seed starting mix. It will make all the difference. It will get your seeds going, give them a good start in life. All right, so now that you have your pots and you have your soil, and by the way, I'll give you another little tip, and that is if you wait to the end of the season, like maybe around September, October, you go to gardening centers or even Walmarts, you can go and get potting mixes for $2 instead of $15 a bag. So keep that in mind, and then you can just put it in your garage. All right, so now you need seeds. So we're going to talk about seeds. And, well, before that, let's talk about our cold climate. So I'm assuming, but I don't know for sure, are you guys a zone 5 up here? Do you know? 5 mostly? Okay, I'm just going to go with that. Zone 5. So you would be considered to be in a short season, okay? because the definition of short season climate is 110 days or less without frost. So if your last frost date is around June, first part of June, and then your first killing frost is around the first week of September, that's 90 days or so, right? June, July, and August, approximately. So you are considered to be a short season here, short season cold climate. So there's two different types of seeds or crops that you can grow. Cool hardy crops or the cool season tender crops. So the hardy crops, it's the list there on the left, you don't have to use covers with, okay, like asparagus and beets and things like that. They will grow because they're more adapted to the cold climate. If you're going to do the tender crops, like tomatoes or green beans or potatoes or things like that, you need to, number one, make sure that they don't get in the ground until after the frost, or you need to use some type of covers with those. So those are the two different types of plants or seedlings that you're going to be looking for. So now you're going to look for seeds. And it's fun to look at seed catalogs, isn't it? I know I was all excited when I first started doing it, and I would just be spending all this money on seeds and buying whatever I wanted because I didn't realize that there was a difference in the type of seeds that you should have in a cold climate. So when you're looking at seeds, number one, you should be looking at how many days does that seed take to grow before I can eat it. And if the seed says more than 100 days, I would say 90. I wouldn't go any more than that, unless you really know how to extend your season, which we'll talk about. But if it's more than 100 days, don't even try to grow it in your cold climate. You'll be just frustrated, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, there are two major kinds of seeds. They're the heirloom and non-heirloom. Who's familiar with that at all? You've heard the terms at least. So I have some catalogs back on the table. Baker Creek or rareseeds.com sells heirloom, just all heirloom seeds. And basically what that means is that if you're going to grow an heirloom seed, an heirloom plant, and you save those seeds, that means that when you plant those seeds next year, you should get that same exact plant again, okay? Unless there's some type of cross-pollination, which can happen with tomatoes. If you're growing a bunch of different kinds of tomatoes in a greenhouse, that can happen. But as a general rule of thumb, if you grow heirloom seeds, if you grow an heirloom cucumber, save that seed, next year you'll get that same heirloom cucumber, okay? You can do non-heirloom seeds, and you can still save the seeds, but you're not guaranteed to get that same exact plant the next year. And I've done that. I save all sorts of different types of seeds. And your lettuce might look different, but if it's edible, right, and if it grows, that's fine. I'm fine with that, especially if you have already trained a certain kind of a plant, like a lettuce plant or whatever, to grow in your cold climate, in your harsh climate, in that garden where you have, and you save that seed. What do you think is going to happen next year when you plant that seed? It's going to do better because that plant has already adapted itself to your cold climate, okay? And I have saved, sometimes you'll grow a plant and you'll be looking at it and you'll say, what is that thing? Because it crossed with something else. So I've had, like a zucchini crossed with a squash or something, and it's got these ribs in it that looks like a centipede or a caterpillar or something. What is that? It kind of makes for some nice, decoration in your garden. And as long as it tastes good and it's edible, it's okay. But anyway, that's the difference between heirloom versus non-heirloom. And some people will ask me about hybrid seeds, and are they okay to grow? Hybrid seeds are fine. Hybrids are just crossed with other things. The best example I can think of is dogs. Like if you cross a Labrador with a Shepherd, you'll get a Shepherdor or whatever. They are crossing dogs to make it, so that they'll do better in cold climates or whatever. And so that's what they do with plants. Same thing with hybrids. So I'm perfectly fine with growing hybrids. In fact, sometimes hybrid broccoli does better in a cold climate than the heirloom stuff. I've had better luck with it anyway. All right, so now that you understand the difference between the heirloom versus non-heirloom, the other thing you're looking for, like I mentioned, is the days to maturity. Now, if these are turnips right here. If they say 50 days on here, that doesn't mean that from the time I put the seed into my little pot of dirt here, that doesn't mean that in 50 days I'm going to be eating a turnip. What that means is after it has emerged from the soil, you should be eating it in 50 days. So if your seeds are old, or if the conditions aren't right, and if they don't germinate for 2 or 3 weeks, you have to figure that into the equation of your 50 days. So you have to add that on to your 50 days. Does that make sense? All right, so it's 50 days from emergence. So as we go through this, you'll see, and this is why I start seeds so early, because you want to make sure they're actually coming up and growing before even the snow melts outside. These will also tell you how far apart to plant your seeds, how far apart to space them when you transplant them, and all of that. So that's how you can pick seeds out to grow. And by the way, get them if you don't have them. Start buying seeds for next year. Keep them in a cool, dark, dry place, and they will last for years. I have germinated 11-year-old seed before, and I'm sure others of you have probably done even older seed than that. Just keep them dry and cool. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but they sell out fast, and some of the more popular varieties aren't even available anymore. So start getting your seeds. This is just a chart that I use for when to start seeds. And your area, it may be different for you, but this is based on starting seeds like this in a pot or in a little tub with no heat underneath, so no heating mat. Okay, no external heat, and no grow lights. Okay, these are just seeds put in the dirt in a sunny window. So if you are adding extra, the heat underneath, you're adding the light on the top, you probably don't need to start your things quite as early. But I'm showing how I have done it, and I think that it's important that we start thinking a little bit outside of being dependent on all these other things, that make gardening sometimes, more cumbersome, because now I got to buy an expensive heating mat. Now I got to have lights. Now I got to have a grow rack. Now I got to have this. Now I got to have that. Okay, so what I'm here to teach you, like I said, I keep it simple, and I don't use anything fancy. Now I will tell you this, though. I put 11-year-old eggplant seed in here, and they were not coming up and were not coming up. Instead of just giving up on them, what I did was I put them on a rack over top of my wood stove. And that little bit of heat that was coming on the wood stove after about 2 weeks finally made them pop up. So if you're having trouble like that, put them over your heating vent in your house. Another place is put them on top of your refrigerator. There's just enough heat on top of your refrigerator that will make them eventually pop up out of the soil. Okay? So that's a chart there, and then, after frost is when you can put other things in the ground like green beans and things like that, if you're not using covers. I always recommend to keep good records, because you never know, you think you're going to remember, and trust me, you won't. You'll put your seeds in, they'll pop up, and you'll say, well, last year I started these in January, and they weren't ready to go in the ground until July. Well, that's kind of late, so now I need to start them earlier next year. Or I wasn't eating them until August, which means you should have started them maybe in December or whatever. So write everything down, when you're harvesting it, when you sowed the seed in the pot, when you transplanted it outside. Keep all good records of that. It will help you next year. All right, so here's how you do it. I used to work in a greenhouse, okay, so I learned a lot of things, tips and tricks from there. But this is what we would do, okay? You get the soil, your potting mix, and first of all, if it's cold and frozen in your garage, bring it in and heat it up and thaw it out, okay? Get it warm. Seeds will germinate better with warm soil, so put it in your living room by your wood stove or whatever. And then get it wet. Wet it first, because if you're trying to plant seeds into dry soil, your seeds will go everywhere and they won't stay where you want them to. So if you just get some kind of a bucket and you put your soil in there, wet it down, kind of like not as wet as a brownie, but like crumbly, and then plant from that. Okay, wet it down. I'll show you some pictures here. Put your seeds in the little pot there. Put a little bit of soil over the top of them. Pat it down. That's what I call it. Pat it down and gently water it. Don't blast it with water, because your seeds are going to go everywhere, okay? Just gently, if you had a little kitchen sprayer or something like that, all right? And then just put it in a warm, sunny window. Make sure that you label your seeds, what you put in there. You think you're going to remember. And it's a surprise when you put it in the garden, because it's not what you thought it was. Anyway, so here's my warm, sunny window. And I like to germinate in these kind of containers, okay? This is from the grocery store. So You just put your little container in there and put it in the sunny window like that. And at night especially, I would close it up, but during the day I would prop it open somehow to get some air, because otherwise you could get mold growing in there and things like that. And just keep them rotated and once in a while like that in your sunny window. And see, you can tell there's nothing fancy there. Nothing fancy about what I do. And those are actually the lettuce tubs on top of each other. So once your plants get taller, just flip that tub over like that, and then you can still continue to keep plants in it. All right, so now that your plants have popped up, it's time to think about transplanting. And people always ask me this question, so I will just answer it now. Can't you just take a big pot of like this, put some dirt in it and put a seed in it and grow it like this? Yes, you can, but it won't be healthy, okay? It will pop up and it'll grow and it'll get really, really tall and really, really spindly, and then it will fall over, okay? So when I worked in the greenhouse, the little tiny seedlings would come in these little plug trays, and we would take them out of the little tiny plug trays, and then we would put them in these little pony packs, is what they're called. This is what we would do. And then from here, we would put them into the next size pot. And the reason that you do that is because it's forcing the root growth, it's forcing the growth up into the stem for a thicker stem and a hardier plant. Because the roots can't go anywhere else. So where does the growth go? Into the stem, okay? That's why you do it. So depending on when you can finally put your plants out in the garden is going to be dependent on how many times you're going to be transplanting. Sometimes it's only once, sometimes it could be 5 times. And how do you know when to transplant? Well, I'll show you some pictures on here, but when your plants start getting so tall that they're starting to fall over, that's when you need to start transplanting. So your first transplant is when your plant looks like this. I don't know if you can see in the middle, that's a pepper plant. Right in the center of the plant, your plants will start to grow what's called the second set of true leaves, or real leaves, I guess you could call it. Right in the middle, can you see those brighter green leaves? Those are the real leaves, or the true leaves. And that's when you can transplant. If you do it too soon, before it gets those real leaves, they will die. So you have to wait until they get that second set of leaves on there. Once they get that second set of leaves, all you have to do is take a fork and dig it out of the container, and you're not going to hurt it, okay? Some people worry, oh, I'm going to break it or this or that, but no, don't even worry about it. You literally just dig it out. I don't know if you can see that, but those are the roots on the bottom of that there. You dig it out. What was that? Question? Well, if it gets root bound, you can still just kind of dig around it with the fork and just kind of peel it out of there. And it still should be okay. And then you get your next container ready, whatever that one is that you're going into. This would be the next size for this. And then you just literally just stick the roots down in there and cover it up like that. So, no, it's not going to die. And then I usually water it so it doesn't go into too much shock there. And then these are nowhere near being ready to transplant yet. Okay, these are my little babies I take with me to my classes. But these will probably get to be about 6 to 8 inches tall, and they'll start looking like they're going to start falling over. And then I would go into one of these next, the next size. You can get these online, or these are from the Dollar Tree or whatever. And then once they start, I'll show you a picture here, once they get a little bit bigger, then you'll go to the next pot. Now, these are tomato plants that I let go too long, and I don't remember why, but I wanted you to see what they look like. Has anybody had plants that look like that? Really spindly, and they're falling over, and what am I going to do with these things now? I will show you what to do. Because literally they're in the pot and they're kind of like falling over like this, they're really tall and everything. So you dig them out and you get your next pot ready. Just put a tiny little bit of dirt in the bottom, okay? Take the whole entire tomato plant and take the stem and bend it like this and put it down in the pot. And then just sprinkle dirt over top of it. And all along that stem will grow more roots. And then what you're doing is you're making the plant so that you're burying it up to the neck, because that is what makes it healthy. Every time you transplant it, you bury it up to the neck. And if the plant is this tall and it's spindly and it's falling over and you're not going to be able to put it into another plant, without bending it. That's how it makes it a good, healthy, sturdy, stocky plant. Now, you can also coil it around inside the pot. I've done that too, like a snake, like coil it around like this and put it down in there like this, okay? The tomato stems they're flexible. You're able to do that with those. And they grow so fast, you have to do that, okay? Pepper plants are not flexible. You can't do that. Next transplant, well, actually, that's adding support to the tomatoes that are in these because I wasn't ready to transplant them. So what you're looking at there are little bamboo skewers that I cut in half. And then I would just take a little twisty tie and put them around them, and that will hold them up straight until I'm ready to transplant them. So that's just showing you another thing that you can do if you can't get to them right away. Okay, that's the next transplant, just in cups there, nothing fancy as you can see. And then the next transplant, this is the last transplant, I went into this size. So you can see that they're healthy plants, they're upright, they're sturdy, they're not staked up, they're doing really, really well, all right? So this is mostly tomatoes that you're going to do this with because they grow so fast and because you're starting them in January or February, which we'll go over. The pepper plants are sturdier, stockier. You may just have to put a little stick in there, but you're not going to have to transplant them as often. Did you have a question? Yeah,
Dawn?
you can, and don't be afraid. She's asking, do you just plant them to the first leaf?
If anybody has a question, we have the roving mic here, and I'll bring it over to you so
Okay.
everybody can hear.
Yeah, that would be great. Or I can repeat the questions too, whichever works the best. Yeah. Yeah, don't be afraid to bury the leaves because they'll just compost into the soil. It's not going to hurt them. You don't need to clip them off or anything like that. But yeah, get it down there as far as you can. You're not going to hurt it. It's better for it. So now that you have got everything growing in your warm, sunny window, now I realize that, I usually teach classes in January, start in January, okay? But I know we're a little bit late here as far as starting seeds. Don't start tomatoes right now. It's too late. Don't start peppers or eggplant right now. It's too late, okay? But think about this for next year, all right? So you're getting your garden ready now. Snow is starting to melt, and also in the fall, you're preparing your garden. And the first thing I tell people is to put up a good fence, okay? Put up a good fence because people get frustrated. They go out and they put lettuce in their yard and they want to have a garden. And then the deer and the rabbits and whatever come and eat it all. And then they put their fence up. And then next year the deer know, ooh, there's a good garden in there. So the deer jump the fence and they go in and then they eat it because they know it's there. So if you, first of all, put up a good fence, take the time to do it, then they don't know there's anything behind the fence. They have no reason to try to bust the fence down to get in there. Does that make sense? Okay. That was a really fast explanation. So anyway, I always recommend that. And people ask me what size, how tall to make their fence. It just depends. So if you're in the woods like we are, the deer can't run through the trees as well and jump and hop the fence. It doesn't have to be as tall. I've heard other people have recommended putting a shorter fence outside the deer fence, like about 2 feet tall, just a rope that goes around, because they won't jump two. They're afraid they're going to get stuck between the two. So I don't know. That's just a thought for those who are wondering about that. So in preparing your soil, there's different ways that you can do soil testing. I'm not going to go through that today, but you can talk to your local extension office, do a soil test. They'll tell you what minerals you're missing in that. And I know that Tony here has some great soil amendments. You talk to him about that, and I was excited to see this. He's right in Moyer Springs. If you need soil amendments, yeah, talk to this guy over here. So anyway, you can add chicken manure, horse manure, whatever you have. You can bury your kitchen compost in there. In fact, what I like to do in the fall is I'll just, after the plants are out, I will just till a row down the beds and then fill that with the kitchen compost until it starts snowing so much that I can't put any more in there, and then cover it up, and then it composts all winter long in the bed and attracts worms. So then your beds are ready now. After the snow melts, everything's already composted all winter and it's ready to go. In fact, I do that in the hoop house too. I bury my kitchen compost in there, and it doesn't freeze. So, yes, we have a question over here.
Question about composting and attracting bears.
Yeah, attracting bears. Yeah, and I heard this year to be careful that the grizzlies are really, really hungry, to watch out. I would just bury it really, really deep. I mean, or if you're uncomfortable with even doing that, then you just have to find another way to get rid of your kitchen scraps and things like that. I'll talk about worm bins. That's another option. And then the other thing is that I do around this time of year is once the snow is gone, I will put black plastic on my bed, on the raised beds, and that just helps to heat up everything and get everything going a little bit faster. You can get free black plastic called lumber wrap at hardware stores usually, and just put the black side up, put that down around this time of year, and it'll warm up the soil underneath for you. So that gives you a head start on gardening too. A question in the back, yes?
What about straw?
You mean as far as composting it, or?
Just putting it on top of your raised beds.
I mean, you could do that. Yeah. Do you leave it on then after you put your plants in?
Well, garlic,
Yeah, the straw stays on the garlic. Yeah. I mean, that would help. Just the black attracts the sunlight and just heats it up faster. I'm not sure how much the straw would help heat it up, but it definitely keeps the garlic from going, seeding out and everything. Yes, question up here.
I see you have pine needles on the list. Are pine needles a good composting material?
I use pine needles around my blueberry bushes because of the acid in them, and they don't break down as well. I probably wouldn't do that, but yeah. Were there other questions on that? And you can look online too on ways to do composting bins or piles or whatever. But yeah, definitely think about the bears. And then if you don't have a garden, some people are still in apartments or in transitions or whatever, so I like to talk a little bit about, these kind of ideas like growing potatoes in trash cans, or getting a shoe rack and hang it on a fence or whatever you have, or if you just have a little, patio, put some containers there and grow food. I'm really trying to encourage people to be more independent and just grow food any way, shape, or form that you can grow food. Even if it's just a little pot on your kitchen counter, put lettuce in it, do something, okay? Don't put it off any longer. Saying, I'll get to that next year. Yeah, okay, do it now. All right, so here's another thing that is really important that you have to do, especially in this cold climate. You have to harden off your plants. Hardening off basically means that you are getting them ready to put outside. You're acclimating them. If I take these tiny little pepper plants that were growing so well in my beautiful, sunny, warm home in my window, and I suddenly put them outside, what do you think is going to happen to them? They're going to be in shock and they're going to die right away, okay? You have to get them ready to put them outside. So what you do is just put them all in a big tub or something like that, and you put them out on your front porch. Now, do not put them in direct sunlight right away. That will shock them too. The leaves are not ready for that. They've only had filtered light through your window. So put them in a partly sunny area, and then bring them in. Just put them out for a couple of hours, maybe the first couple of days, and then put them out a little bit longer, and then a little bit longer, and then a little bit longer, and then eventually they can stay out there all night. And then after, a week or two, put them out in the full sun. Let the cat rub up against it, or let the wind blow it. All of those things are hardening off the plant. Now, if you have a hoop house or greenhouse, by the way, I use those terms interchangeably, hoop house, greenhouse, you can harden off your plants in there. So the picture on the right is actually all of my pepper, tomato, and eggplants. I just put them right up there around this time of year, and I cover them. I have these frost blankets, which I'll go over this again later too. But when I'm hardening them off, I put them up there and I cover them with these, and I leave the cover on there for probably at least a week. And then I'll take the cover off and leave the covers off for another week, and then I'll put them in the ground.
And what temperatures?
Temperatures, it just is different all the time. You're going to look at it and you're going to say, it seems like it's warm enough in there during the day, definitely, but it's cooler at night. So I'm going to put an extra sheet over top of it at night tonight, and keep an eye on it and pray over them. After you've been growing them for 5 months, you definitely don't want to lose them all in one night. But it's easier to harden them off that way. You don't have to bring them in and out off your front porch constantly. So this is the tomato plants going into the ground, and I dug really deep holes, and the dark black stuff in the bottom of the hole is worm castings, and I'll go over that. So if you have any type of really good compost that you've been using, or really composted manure, or even some fertilizer, tomato fertilizer, pepper fertilizer. Put that in the very bottom of the hole before you even put your plant in. And then put in your supports with the plant, okay? So if you need bamboo stakes, or if you need a tomato cage or whatever, put it in there with it at that time, because otherwise you're going to mess up the roots if you jam it in there later on, okay? Put it in there as you're planting. And then make sure you water it in really, really well. These are, I don't remember, I think they're cabbage plants there on the right, but you can see they're in a little bit of a shock, and I recommend transplanting later in the day. In fact, I had one lady tell me at a class the scientific reason why you transplant, and I can't remember the exact terminology she used, but after 4 o'clock, there's a part of the plant that literally shuts down. And so when you transplant it after 4 o'clock, it's going to survive and do a lot better. Whereas if you go out there on a bright, hot, sunny day and you're going to take your plants and you're going to put them right into the ground, they're going to be in transplant shock. They'll fall over. They may make it, they may not, but they're not going to look as pretty. So wait until a rainy day or wait until the evening and put them in the ground and water them really, really well, okay? And the other thing is, when you put your tomato plants first in the ground, put in garlic with them, because the garlic keeps away pests from the tomatoes. Or you could put the garlic between the tomato plants. That helps too. But anyway, that's on the transplanting. Does anybody have questions on transplanting? Yes. Okay, she's asking about the garlic. I just put a bulb of garlic. You could put it right in with the plant when you're planting it into the hole, or you could put garlic in between each plant, just to keep pests away. And you can do the same thing with onions too. Any other questions on the transplanting? Okay. And by the way, I know it's a lot of work, and I know it can be overwhelming, especially when you're thinking, you know, I'm going from this tiny little thing to this big thing, and then I'm going outside, and I can see it in your eyes, and I hear it in people's voices. It is work, and it does take time, but you have to think about, why am I doing this? And you have to think, how many of you get frustrated that you're still eating green tomatoes in July and August and September? And then you have buckets and buckets of green tomatoes, and what am I going to do with all these green tomatoes? If you do it this way, if you start early and you put your transplant, by the time you get your plants outside in your garden or in your hoop house, they literally should be from the pot up, they should be like 12 inches above the pot, so almost 2 feet tall. And the reason being is because then you're eating tomatoes in June and July and August and September and October. You're eating tomatoes and peppers and eggplants before, you know, most people are, because you've done it this way. And that's because you're in a cold climate. Okay? All right, I briefly talked about this already, about adding the supports. The top left picture is that bird netting that you can put over fruit trees, and I just zip tied that to the inside of my hoop house, and the peas climb up that. And then, of course, you've got tomato cages. You can do strings. You can tie your tomatoes up with strings. A cattle panel, if you want to run that through the center of your hoop house and tie them to that, that totally works too. So just be creative, and if you don't know, you can always look online. There's lots and lots of ideas. So if you have just a little tiny garden space, what you can do is intensive planting, which means a lot of planting in one little space. So you can take the whole entire package of lettuce and put it in 2 or 3 rows there, and then as they pop up, your other plants should already be established, then you can move them around. So literally just take your little garden spade, dig up a whole bunch of those plants. There's probably 1,000 of them. Maybe you don't need that many, but whatever, you got 100 of them there. Just divide them up. You're not going to hurt them. Just break them apart, take them apart, and go put them in your garden wherever you want them. So lettuce likes shade, so go put them in between all your broccolis, or put them in between all your cabbage plants, or wherever. And that way you don't have to start them in your house, in your bedroom window. They're starting right in the garden. They're already acclimated. You don't have to do any type of hardening off or anything like that. Just put them out all over the place. So that's just another idea for getting a lot of food in a little space. All right, and then I just wanted to mention the pollination too, because sometimes we're not getting as many bees as we're hoping, or whatever's going on. And so with tomatoes, pollinating them is easy. If they're in your hoop house or wherever they are, you just shake the vines just a little bit. You can walk through there and just kind of do this. Or if they're on a string, you can shake the string. If you have a fan running, the fan will pollinate it. If you roll your side up on your hoop house, the wind coming in will help to pollinate things too. Eggplant is self-pollinating, and it likes it really warm. So the eggplant gets covered up as soon as it's planted in the greenhouse, and it just stays that way. You can water through the cover, by the way. And so you don't have to worry about pollinating that. Cucumbers, I just learned within the last couple of years that there's 3 different types of cucumbers. And if you're going to do cucumbers in your hoop house, get the parthenocarpic. It's up there if you want to know how to spell it. But Johnny sells them, and it does not need to be pollinated. It's especially bred for greenhouse growing, so no pollination required. So I thought that was kind of neat to learn that. I didn't know that before. Melons and summer squashes and winter squashes, you can hand pollinate if it looks like you're not getting any fruits. You can go online and you can see demonstrations of it, but there's a male flower and a female flower on every plant. And so the female flower is the one that's going to bear the fruit. Makes sense, right? So the female flower stays on the vine. You can take the male flower off the vine and pollinate the female flower and just leave the flower on there. And that's how you can hand pollinate any kind of melons or squashes. And if you want to see, like I said, live demonstrations, you can look online to see that. Male, the female is open. It's just open, big and open. And the male, it looks like male. People always ask me that question. I don't know how to. You can tell, really obviously. Can you help me with that? Okay, please. That's true too. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes, thank you for that. She's saying that the female flower is going to have a small fruit attached to the bottom of it, like a miniature micro, like olive size fruit. Thank you. I'd forgotten about that. Okay. So you'll see the fruit. And the female flower is open because it needs to be pollinated by a bee or something. It's ready to be pollinated, okay? And the male flower does not have any kind of fruit attached to it. So you take the male flower off and you pollinate the female flower with it. And you can rub it around on the inside of it if you want to take the pollen off and rub it on the inside, or you can just literally just stick it in there if you want to. So that's how you can hand pollinate squash. Okay, so since you are in such a cold climate and short seasoning, I'm going to not seasoning. I'm going to teach you how to extend your season. And here is one idea of things that I did. I dug up the pepper plant from the greenhouse in October and brought it in, and all of the peppers matured. You can see they were green on the left-hand side, and then they turned red and orange by December. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea. And then they got aphids and stuff, and I threw them out after I ate the peppers. And I think they were a little bit stressed being in these little pots. You know, they were used to being in a nice hoop house. But that's just an idea and a thought for you. But this is how I get an extra, actually, 60 days of growing out of my garden. So like I mentioned before, this time of year is when you're putting your black plastic down to start warming up your soil, okay? And then what you can do at the beginning of May is you can go out and you can take all these little hoops right here, and this is called PEX, P-E-X, PEX tubing. You can get it in big rolls at the hardware store, cut them to size or whatever. And I will stick these in. You can see the picture there. I'll stick these in the beds, I don't know, every 2 or 3 feet or whatever. And then I will take my frost blanket and I will put that over the hoops. And then I just use clothespins and I pin it on there. And that will protect from the frost. So I do that at the beginning, like in May, probably beginning part of May. And then what I've got under there would be like the broccoli and the cabbage. I'm not putting tomatoes out. Okay, my tomatoes are in my hoop house, but things like that that could still get a little bit of damage from the frost. That's how I get 30 days. So I'm getting all of May now, all of June, all July, all August. And then I do the same thing in September. So just before that first killing frost comes, if you can get through that first killing frost, you're probably going to have another 2 to 4 weeks of growing if you can get through that. So get your hoops back up, okay, in beginning of September, end of August, before your frost comes, get these back up and put your frost blanket back out again. Cover up your cabbage, your squash, whatever you still have out there that you don't want killed with that first frost. And now you should be able to go all through September. So now you've got another 30 days right there. So you've added 2 months, basically, a month at the beginning of the season and a month at the end of the season, just by adding this blanket here, frost blanket. Is there any questions on that part of extending the season at all? And by the way, once your frost blanket is on there, you can water straight through it. It's water permeable. Yes? I will talk about that too, but you can get these. I'll just show you right now. She's asking where to get the frost blankets. You can get them online. It's called Garden Fabric or Ag Fabric. And this one is, 0.55 ounces is the frost blanket. If you get the thinner one, it would just be insect protection, and that's 0.45 ounces. So this is the one that you want for the cold. 0.55 ounces. And I will leave that up here too if people want to take a picture of it. But you can look online, probably Amazon, different places. I know gardening places carry it too, but it may be more expensive. But it'll last you for several years. This is just another idea I saw online. I thought it was kind of cool, a little greenhouse there with a clear tub. But I saw a lady that literally just bought a bag of soil, took a knife, cut off the top part of a big square out of the top of the bag of soil, put her lettuce seeds in there and covered it with a tub just like that. And you wouldn't believe how much lettuce she was eating just out of that bag of soil. She had her own little personal garden on her front porch. I thought that's a great idea. That didn't cost very much money and not very much work either. So there, she's being creative and she's growing food. This is just another idea on extending your season a little bit. I'm sure you can find free windows online or restore things like that or build a grow box. But I will tell you that underneath glass gets hot really, really fast. So make sure that you're venting it during the day and closing it at night. This is a hoop house that my 9-year-old at the time built me for Mother's Day. So if a 9-year-old can do that, you guys can do it too. That's just the gray conduit put together and literally just shoved in the ground, and then a wooden pallet that he cut in half in the front there and built a little door. I had more cucumbers grow out of that than I can out of my big greenhouse now. I should tell him to build me another little one like that. Question, yes?
Is there something like that PEX material that you were talking about?
It's gray conduit. Yeah, I'm going to show you that on part 2. Are you hanging around for the part 2? Yeah, she's asking about how to build, what's the gray tubing that comes around. I'm going to go step by step on how we built ours. All right, so let me mention some other crops here. Has anybody grown sweet potatoes before up here in the cold climate? One couple people? Okay, yeah, you can do it. They have to be protected. I wouldn't just put them outside. But so here's how you start them. Just get yourself a yam or sweet potato around Thanksgiving time and put it in some dirt. Again, I like the tofu tubs, but whatever you have. Don't cover the whole potato, it'll rot. Leave half of it exposed, as you can see in the picture there. Keep it watered, and it'll start growing green slips. Those are called slips. Once they get to be about 6 to 8 inches tall, just break the slips off and put them into a glass of water, and they grow roots. And that's your sweet potato slip. And then you put them in the ground. They take about 5 months to grow, and they also grow deep. So your soil needs to be well amended with peat moss and things like that, sawdust and stuff, so that they can grow down in there. The first year I grew them, they were about 12 inches long, and they were as skinny as pencils. And I did some research and figured out why that was, because my soil was just way too thick. They couldn't bust through it. So once they start to flower, it's about 2 weeks after that you can dig them out. So if you're putting them into pots in your greenhouse, you can do that. So May, June, July, August, and September, that's your 5 months. And then you can look online how to cure them. But I tell you what, growing your own, they are the best, like you've never had before. And also, the vines are edible. They will grow everywhere. They will take over your entire greenhouse. Everywhere they touch the dirt, they will grow more potatoes. So keep that in mind. But if you don't want them growing everywhere, just cut them off and give them to your chickens. You can eat them. They taste like spinach. I only have one potato plant, sweet potato plant left over there. I'm all sold out of them. But you can grow your own right now. Go ahead and put them in a little pot in your house, in your window, and you can have a pretty sweet potato vine growing in your window that you can eat. All right, let's go to the next plant. So garlic. I know you can get them around here. Is it Ronagerd's farm or somewhere? Different places you can get garlic. Get good garlic that's native to the area if you can. It'll probably do better for you. Put it in October before the ground freezes and cover it, mulch it really good with some straw, and then water it. The first 30 days of after you put it in is when it does its most growth. So water it really well that time, and then you don't need to water it anymore until probably this time of year. But anyway, how do you know how to pull them out of the ground is when they start, the first leaves on the bottom of it die. And you can pull them out of the ground and then cure them in the sun, dry them, and then you'll have garlic. If you're not growing garlic, you need to. Garlic is very medicinal, very good for you. And you can put it in a little pot even in your window. Get garlic from Costco or something like that and just use the greens. Just clip the greens off of them and use those in cooking. I put this on there just to show people how long it takes to get something to eat. So I planted those eggplant last year, I think, or the year before. I sowed the seed in January, and I wasn't eating eggplant till August. So I just want you to think a little bit about when you go to the grocery store and you're buying food, how long it takes to get things to eat. Asparagus I would recommend because it comes back every year. Put your money and your time and your effort into perennial plants, into things that are always going to keep coming back. Asparagus 20 years or more. It'll keep coming. So make sure you put it in a bed where you don't mind that it's going to take over, because it kind of will, which is good. And actually, asparagus is one of the first things that pop up out of the ground in the spring. And I was reading about that, and scientists think that the reason is because God made it this way, that this is the first plant that comes up because it's the highest in vitamins and minerals and nutrition after being all winter without any greens. That's what they've done, scientific studies on it anyway. So once the fronds come out and then they die, cut them off and just leave them on the bed there for your fall, and then again, go ahead and add manure to it and your amendments and things and let it sit there all winter long. Now, carrots, I want to mention. I used to put carrots outside and they never did really well. And then I always had to worry about digging them up and storing them somewhere. And every method I tried of storing never worked. They would rot or they would get shriveled up. So what I do now is I just plant them in the greenhouse and leave them in there, and then I go in and I just get carrots whenever I need. So what I do is I put one row of carrots in. I've already done one this year. And then in about 2 or 3 more weeks, I'll put another row of carrots in. 2 or 3 weeks, I'll do another row of carrots. And carrots and tomatoes are companion plants. They like to be together. So I put them on the outside of each of the tomato beds. They're not interfering with each other because one grows up and one grows down, right? And so that way, whenever I need carrots, I just go up there. I don't have to fight the snow. Somebody told me, oh, I just go outside and I dig them out of my garden. I said, you must not have very much snow in your garden. Oh, I just moved the snow. I'm thinking, you have this much snow. How are you moving the snow to get 2 carrots for supper? I can't do that. But maybe some of you can. But anyway, the picture there on the right is what the pathway looks like in August. The carrots are, fronds are all falling over like that. By the way, you can eat the tops too. So that's how I do carrots. And then winter squash, I finally figured out how to grow big, decent-sized winter squash. And number one, I had to figure out how to pollinate because they weren't always getting pollinated. But next, I figured out that they like it warm. So I got a bunch of that lumber wrap, and I put that in the bed where the squash goes, and I just punched some holes where the plants were going to go. So what I do in the fall is I add my kitchen compost to the hole, or your manure, whatever it is, and let it sit there all winter long. So now everything's composted and it's getting ready to put the squash in. So I leave that black plastic down all the time because the vines are going to grow all over it, okay, and it likes that heat. So then when I plant my squash seeds, squash are kind of fragile. They don't really like to be messed with too much, their roots. So I would just gently, as it's growing and I'm ready to transplant it outside, I would gently just take the plant and cradle it like this, and I would very gently, tap on it to get it out of the pot. Be as gentle as you possibly can, and then you're gently just going to put it in the hole like this, and then I cover them. You can see the cover. And then I put that frost blanket cover over top of them because they like it warm. And I leave the frost blanket on there until they start to flower, because they don't need to be pollinated until they have flowers on them. And they do really well. They really, really like that. So I'll take the covers off sometime in June. They start getting flowers. And then I will cover them back up again. If they're still having their fruits, which they are in September, I'll cover them again to get through that killing frost. And what I do is around the middle of August, I go around to each vine and I take off any fruits that are really small, that haven't really amounted to anything, because all that's doing is taking your minerals from your big ones, right? All the vitamins and everything that's going to that. So clip those off, take those off, and leave the big ones on there and cover them up. Now you're just giving your squash another 30 days to grow and get big, okay? And then once the stems get hard, you'll be able to tell they just come off the vine really easily. Then set them in the sun and let them harden up. And then you can keep them all winter long. The big gray one in the very back of that picture is a Jarrahdale squash, and I'm telling you, that thing was huge. It is the longest lasting squash that I've been able to find, and they claim 12 months on it. So if you can get a variety, some are only 3 months, some are only 4 months, but if you start thinking this way and you're thinking, oh, now I've got squash that'll last me for all these months, all winter. I've got carrots now. Oh, and I've got onions, and I've got garlic, and I've got all this stuff stored up. You start thinking this way, you've got yourself quite a bit of food that you can eat and feed your family on. And some people say, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like this. I won't eat green beans, or I don't like squash. Well, learn to like it because it's food that will store well, okay? There's two different types of green beans, pole beans and bush beans. Only grow pole beans if you have big fences to grow them on, okay? They will take big, tall fences, some of them. The bush beans are shorter, so it doesn't matter whichever ones you want to do. And this is how I do the green beans. I'll probably be starting them in about a week or two in flats like this. I just put the seeds, 1 or 2, depending on how old your seeds are, 1 or 2 per pack. And I will just guess on how many I think I need for my rows in my garden, and then I will do 1 extra of these on top of my guess, because they don't always come up. How many have planted rows and rows of green beans and you go out there and half of them don't pop up? And then you're so frustrated because half your garden now there's nothing in it. And it's too late to go put more out. So that's why I start them in these. People say it can't be done, but I do it. So about 6 inches tall or so, then you transplant them out into your garden after the frost, okay, for the green beans. One type of variety is Provider that I've used for many, many years. It works really well with the green beans. Buy a big bag of them, by the way, so that you'll have them. Don't buy these little tiny like packages unless you're just doing a little bit, but they'll last. They'll last for years, and they're much cheaper. And you could share with somebody too. You could share like a pound or 2 of them. Okay, and with onions, make sure that you're growing long day onions. I know that seems weird, but in northern climates, you have to grow long day, okay, long day onions, because if you think about it, summer days are extremely long. So, long day onions. So, you can do a couple different things. You can buy the onion plants from a nursery and then put them in the ground now. They can go out now. You can do that. That's totally fine. If you want to start your own seed, I would start probably in January and start them in little tubs like this. And once they get their true leaves, which they are onions, but they'll split, okay, then you can transplant them. Put 2 or 3 of them in each of these little cell packs like this, and then put them out in the ground around this time of year. And then once they get the green part on the top of the onion starts getting really, really tall and really, really thick, what you need to do, it's called ringing them in. And you can go online, you can watch a demonstration too. But you can take a kitchen butter knife and bend it, okay, into a little tool, so it's bent down like this, and ring in each onion, which means you're pulling the soil away from the bulbs. So the bulb is basically just sitting on top of the soil, and the roots are still buried. You don't want to dig up the roots, okay? Leave the roots still buried, but probably 90% of the bulb is on top of the soil, and then your bulbs will swell and they'll get bigger. Your onions will get bigger that way. And I think that's all I had on that one. Yeah, starting them. They like fertilization too. Manure, yes. It'll say, on the top of the package, it'll say long day. Or if you're looking in some, I can show you some if you want, but if you look in those catalogs, it'll say short day onions, section intermediate day onions, section long day onions. And hopefully the ones that they sell at the hardware stores around your area would be ones that they grow in this area, but I don't know for sure. You'd have to check into that. And another thing I did this last year, this was an experiment that I did, because I'd heard about overwintering onions, but I'd never tried it before. So in August, I took a bunch of onion seeds, and I've just planted them outside in the garden, and they came up right away, of course. It's August, right? They came up, and they did great. And then I thought, now what am I going to do with these? Do I just leave them out here in the snow and hope for the best? I didn't know. So I just took a big flat shovel and I dug up the dirt with the onion, so I wasn't disturbing them too much because I didn't know how it would go. And I just put that whole slab of dirt in the hoop house. And then I just covered them with this and left them there all winter. So that's a picture I just took last week. So you can see they made it through the winter. So I overwintered them. So now I've got these onions that are, 8, 10 inches tall that are ready to go out into the garden as soon as I get time. So I thought that was kind of a neat way of doing it too. So you can try that. I already talked about the mushrooms, but this is so exciting. I'm waiting for my mushrooms to pop up in my hoop house. I have actually got 3 different patches of mushrooms going. That I'm waiting on, but I cannot wait for these to come up, and they're supposed to be really great for pathogens and things in the greenhouse and spread all over the place, so you can dehydrate them and cook them up like meat, burgers and stuff like that. I guess they're a good substitute for that. So anyway, talk to Tony about that. So that's something new I just added to this. And just some other things to think about. Strawberries, they come back every year. Put some strawberries on the ground. Raspberries, blueberries take around 7 years to start bearing. So if you're going to do that, get them now and get them in the ground. And put some fertilizer in there. Give them a boost. Carrots I already talked about. Beets keep well. Turnips keep well. Cabbage keeps really well. One year I grew 30 heads of cabbage. I pulled them all out by the roots and just hung them in a cold space, and they lasted all year long. I'm still eating cabbage from this last year, as long as you can keep them nice and cool. You may have to peel off a few of the outer leaves, but, who cares? So there, now you've got cabbage that are lasting. Potatoes, I think everybody probably knows you can get potatoes around here too, but make sure you're keeping seed. And if you're not able to get them, I've heard you can get the organic potatoes from Azure, places like that, and grow those. Friends of mine have said that anyway. And then keep your stock, because who knows? Keep some seed potatoes for the next year. Who knows if you're going to be able to get them, or if there's a blight or something, and you don't want to grow those kind. So you have your own stock already there. Corn. If you've done corn before, it can be a challenge in a cold climate, so get the shortest day corn that you can possible. There's 60 or 65 day corn now that doesn't get as tall, little baby ears on it, so that's an idea for you. And again, if you're going to do the corn, start them in flats like this and don't put them out till they're about 6 inches tall. I would start them the same time you start green beans. And then the Jerusalem artichokes, if you've never done those, they're kind of cool because they will spread too. So make sure you put them either in a pot or in a bed off by themselves. And you can leave them in the ground forever. You can just dig them up whenever you want to eat some, and you can share them with people. And they grow these really pretty, looks like a sunflower on the top. So they're kind of cool to have around. They're funny looking, but they taste good. And yeah, that's that one. All right, so on saving seed, there's an excellent book back here. If there's a particular crop that you're wanting to know how to save a seed on, you can look it up back there. These are onions in the greenhouse, and those are white spear winter onions. If you just let it go to seed like that, the bulb will form, and then the little black seeds will just fall out, and they'll go everywhere, and you will have little tiny green onions. These are like salad onions, okay? Green onions, you'll have them everywhere in your greenhouse. And then you can take them and dig. They transplant very well, by the way. Take them out and put them all throughout your garden everywhere. Let them go to seed, and then you'll have even more onions wherever you want. You will have, if you get these, I'm telling you, they're back in stock, by the way. You will have onions for the rest of your life. I am growing the same, probably 6 years now, the same exact onion plants in the greenhouse. I just keep cutting them off, or I dig one out and more grow or whatever, and I share them with people, and they are huge. All right, so there. Now you've got onions. Yes, question. White spear is what they're called, and they're winter. Yes, S-P-E-A-R. And Johnny's sells them, and they're in that catalog if you want to look back there. And if you want to save tomato seeds or different things, I mean, I can tell you how to save all sorts of seeds, but we'd be here all day. But a lot of them are just let them go to flower, okay? Let them form their flowers. You can break the flowers off and let them dry in a paper bag and keep them that way. Label what they are. Or just let them seed right there in your garden, and then you'll have all these little tiny lettuce plants coming up all over the place. Save yourself a lot of time. And make sure you dry them out, and make sure you store them in a cool, dry place, and make sure you label what they are for next year for your seeds. All right, so I mentioned a little bit earlier about the vermicomposting, which is doing a worm bin. And the reason why I started doing worm bins is because I was trying to figure out what do I do with all my kitchen trash in the wintertime when the ground is frozen. So I found this online, and basically what you need to know is there's two different kinds of worms. There's earthworms, which are outside in your garden, okay, and they go deep. And then there are the red wigglers, which are the composting worms. And the red wigglers are the ones that you want for kitchen trash because they eat your compost. So you need to actually order those, and I think I have on here, I'll get to it, a man somewhere over in Washington that sells them, or you can get them online. So what I did was I just put two big tubs together, drilled holes in the bottom of the top tub so that their waste can go down into the second bucket container, and fill it up with dirt, newspaper, peat moss, whatever you have for the worms there. And there's a book on worm bins back there too if you want to take a look at that. Just don't put lots of fats or grease or citrus. It'll kill the worms. So you get your worms, you put them on one side of the bin, you put your kitchen trash on the other side of the bin, and then the worms eventually find their way over there and they eat it, okay? And they're composting it, and in 3 months, they will multiply themselves. So if you started with 5,000 worms, now you have 10,000 worms in 3 months. That's how fast they multiply. And in 3 months, you need to clean that container out and do it again. So I just get a big plastic sheet there, tarp, put dump the whole worm bin on there, divide it into piles, and the worms don't like light, so they go down to the bottom of the pile, and I scoop the top of the worm castings off and put it in another container, and that's what I put in my garden. That's what I put in the bottom of the holes, or sprinkle it along the plants. It's like gold. It's black gold. It's really good if you can do this. And they like to be between 40 and 80 degrees, so you cannot take your worm bin and throw it out in the garage in the wintertime. They'll freeze. You can put it back in a pantry or a cold bedroom. I've had mine in the living room before, and it does not stink. Okay, there's no flies or anything like that because you're burying the kitchen trash under the dirt. Oh, that's the man who sells the worms if you're anywhere near, I'm trying to remember, I believe it's Otis Orchards, which I don't even know where that is, but I thought I would add that on there. Okay, so that is the end of part 1. Part 2 is going to be the winter aspect of gardening, and if you don't mind, we will take about a 5-minute break so that I can prepare for that one, and you can look around, and the bathrooms are out the hall to the left, I believe, right? Okay. If everybody wants to find their seats again. We are going into part 2 now, which to me is the most exciting part. I understand if you have to go, I totally get it. I'm not going to be offended. This is all online. You can watch it if you get one of my business cards. This is on YouTube. You can watch it anytime you want. Go back. Sometimes it's overwhelming. People say, oh, too much information overload, right? So just go back, do a recap, go slow, whatever. Pause the slides and take it all in and make yourself a plan. So like I said, I'm from the East. So when I came out here and started gardening, it was a major learning curve for me. And come, September after your killing frost, I didn't really want to hang up my shovel and be done. I know a lot of people say, oh, gardening season's done. I'm so glad. Oh, phew. I don't want to do anymore. I get that. I totally get that. But this, once you get it in the ground, there's no maintenance. There's nothing that you have to do in the winter but eat it. Okay? So my goal was, I want to figure out how can I grow food 365 days a year in a greenhouse without heat. Because what I had always thought in my mind and heard people talking about was that you have to build these big, huge, expensive greenhouses, and then you have to heat them. And I thought, how am I going to do that? Living off the grid, how in the world are you going to provide heat? Well, I guess you could spend a lot of money on propane, running a heater in there all the time, or you could build yourself some type of a stove and cut even more firewood than you already have to cut and try to keep that going, right? And I thought, none of that is going to work for me. So what I did was I got online and I started doing research on winter gardening, and I came across a man named Elliot Coleman, which most of you have probably heard of. He's all over the internet. And I started doing research and got his books and started reading, and I thought, this guy is doing exactly what I want to do. He lives up in the Northeast on the 44th parallel line, the same line I'm on, and he's growing in unheated greenhouses. I said, if he's doing it, I can do it too. And so when I started looking at these books, I started making a plan. And so his motto is unheated, uninsulated, unbelievable. And I thought, okay, let's see if this is true. So the first year that I did this, I thought, is this really going to work? I don't know. And so I took pictures constantly, all the time, because I wanted to make sure that it was going to work. And so that was the first year. So all these pictures, a lot of them that you're seeing are from the first year. And there's a little mouse. Is that bothering you guys, that little thing, clicker thing up there? I can move it. Sorry. So there's 3 things that you have to know in order to grow in the wintertime. I don't know how to make, there we go. So the first thing you have to do is you have to grow the right things. Don't try to grow tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. It's not going to work. Okay, so grow cold, hardy vegetables. And you will know because the description of the plant will tell you this is a winter plant. These seeds are for winter. It'll have a little star or a snowflake by it sometimes even. So grow the right things. Next thing is succession, which I'm going to talk about. You're growing every 2 or 3 weeks or so. You're putting in another planting. And the other thing to keep in mind is that when you're going to plant something, I already put them away, but my turnip seeds, I always use that as an example. It takes 3 times as long for your plants to mature in an unheated greenhouse than as normal. Okay? So if the turnips say 50 days, multiply that by 3, it's 150 days now before you can eat it. So if you want to eat turnips in your greenhouse in the wintertime, take 150 days and say December. Say you want to be eating them in December. Take December and go back, count back 150 days and figure out where that is. July, August, okay? And I know that's hard to wrap your mind around, but that's because there's no heat, okay? The winter plants need light. They don't need the heat. They need the light, okay? And then the other thing you have to have is protection. So you have to have plastic, you have to have a hoop house or, like a plastic grow box of some kind. You have to have protection. You have to have 6 mil plastic, that's greenhouse plastic. Don't get the cheap stuff, don't get 2 mil, don't get 4 mil, don't do that. You'll be kicking yourself. Get good greenhouse plastic. That'll be the most expensive thing that you'll probably buy. I got mine at Johnny's, I think it was $200 with shipping. For 50 foot long, which would cover my greenhouse twice. and it lasts 6-7 years. It's very durable, and it's worth it. You could split it with somebody if you wanted to. And if you can afford it, get the plastic that has anti-drip coating on it, because then when you're walking in, you're not in a rainforest every time you're in your greenhouse. Trust me, I know from experience with that too. It'd be dripping down your back all the time, and it's just obnoxious. And then the other thing you need is this cover, which I'll talk again about that. So those are the things that you need to keep in mind if you want to start winter gardening. This is a list of things that I grew the very first year, and I know they grow, and I know that they're good, and they work. So these are the ones that I have done. This is not exhaustive, because every single year they add new plants to the magazines. And I can't add any more up there. It's already crammed enough as it is. But it gives you an idea anyway, and most of those are still available. The dates that are in parentheses are the dates that I used according to my calculations. I added up all the days that it would take times 3, and I did all the math. And then I said, okay, so the carrots need to be in the ground by July, and then the ending date, I can't see it from here, is it August? Yeah. I should not plant any after August for winter growth. So that's the beginning date, end date of planting. And the reason is because if you go past a certain date with them, they won't get big enough, they won't mature enough for you to really get a harvest off of them. And so that's why there's a cutoff date for the winter plants. So this is just a picture of the succession planting. Every 2 weeks, I'll do another row or 2 or whatever it is, starting in July. And then I will end in October. And in fact, you may even want to end at the end of September, depending on how cold your climate is. So this is how we built ours. We kind of used some of Elliot's ideas and our own ideas, and we looked online, and this is kind of what we did. And most of you probably know it's busy in the summertime with all the stuff you have going on, and so I just kind of took it upon myself to go ahead and start because I knew that the plants needed to be growing right away. And so I literally just took my wheelbarrow out to the woods and started digging dirt and making beds, and that's what I did. It ended up being 20 by 12. And then what I did was I bought some bags of manure or something from the store and put that on. That's the black stuff on the top. So it's not fancy, as you can see, but I left little 12-inch walkways because you don't need big, huge walkways. It's better that you have more growing space than walkways, okay, in my opinion anyway. So that's how I started. And then we got the lumber from just rough cut lumber from a mill. I don't know if you can do that now, but this was years ago. And then we just put a little frame around the bottom of it there. And I mean, it's kind of hard to do it that way because then you're tripping over plants and beds and stuff or whatever. But if that's the only way you can do it, and that's the way you can motivate somebody to help you get a greenhouse built, then that's what you need to do. You could go ahead and get your plants in the ground because they don't need to be covered until October. But they need to be growing in July. And July's busy, isn't it? So now you can see my reasoning behind that. So that's how we did the base of it. And then this is the secret right here to the snow load, okay? That's 1/2-inch rebar inside 3/4-inch conduit. So it's 2 10-foot piece conduits put together to make a 20-foot span. And then it's a 20-foot piece of rebar. And it bends. It really does bend. You're going to have one person's going to hold the inside of it, on the inside of it, of the frame, and then the other person's just going to bend it down like this, put it on the inside, and screw it in. So you can see how we just attached them right there, and you can see all the hoops along there. All of those have the rebar inside of them. So if you do a 12-foot wide greenhouse and you do a 20-foot long rebar, it gives you a 6-foot ceiling in your hoop house. It's not very tall, and sometimes that doesn't work for people. So one thing you can do is take your walkways and dig them down deeper. I've done that before. Take out some soil so you can kind of step down into it. That'll give you more headspace. The other thing you can do is build your hoop house frame up a little bit more, make it a little bit taller, and put your hoops up taller on the inside of the frame. So that'll give you some more headspace too. And then we attach the top bar there with self-tapping screws, the little conduit clamps. And so that the screws didn't go through, obviously. You don't want to go in through and poking your plastic. That's why we use the self-tapping screws. And that's how we did our front door. What we did was we went to the tire shop and we got a bunch of old, tire tubes that were free. They'll give them to you. And we just made strips out of them, and that's how we tied the frame to the door frame to the hoops. Because you don't want anything rubbing on the plastic and putting holes in the plastic. So anywhere there was something rough, like the wood was touching the plastic, we tried to cover it with the rubber. So that's what it looked like when we were completely done, and I believe it's sometime probably in October. But I will mention the bars that are going across the center of it there, you don't need those. We thought we would need it to help with the snow load and to help keep all the hoops spaced out, but we didn't need it. All it did was add extra shadow to the plants, so we just took those off. But that's the only picture that I have of it without plastic on it. So, question, yes?
So you did it with just the ridge guard?
Yes, and there's no rebar in the top. That's just conduit on the top. Mm-hmm. And I think they're 2.5 feet apart, each one, I believe. And that's worked fine for our snow load. We usually get around 8 feet of snow, not at once, but, throughout the entire winter, so. And I would say at one time, I've probably had close to 2 feet of snow on it. I'm not recommending that, but it just kind of happened that way. And this is how we covered the end. We did the ends first. Now the framing there, we did some extra framing because we thought we were going to have windows in there for ventilation that would open and close, but we didn't need that because it's not that big of a greenhouse. If you open the front door, that's enough ventilation already, and so you don't need all that extra framing beside the door. But it is nice to hang my garden tools on, so I do like it there. But anyway, I'm just trying to make it simple for you. So just frame in a door, and then we used wooden furring strips to attach the bottom of the plastic to the frame, and then pulled it up tight and attached the plastic with these. Like I mentioned before, we just cut these little squares, and then this is 1-inch black plastic water pipe. Just cut sections of these and cut a slit in it. So this adds enough friction, and it protects the plastic from these because these things are sharp, and these are hard to open unless you've done it for a few years and they start to wear out. But you're going to have to probably have 2 people do it. So one person has to open that, and then the other person holds that rubber on there. Put those on there, and that holds your plastic on, and they work great. Sometimes you'll lose a few of them, especially like I said, they start getting worn out, and they'll come off with the snow. They'll pop off, and you'll find them or whatever. Just put them right back on. And you can buy these, okay? I'm just trying to keep things simple. And then the other end we wanted a vent on it. So we got that idea out of one of his books here, the half moon vent. And we just put 2 door hinges on it so it can open all the way. You can see it open all the way, or I tie a string on it, pull it up, and just control it that way, opening it halfway, partway, whatever you want. And then finally we put the last piece of plastic over the whole entire thing. And the framing brackets there, I put on the front of the frame because the roll of plastic was always falling on the ground, so that just holds that in place. So when I first started out, it wasn't fancy. I would just roll that white PVC up, and I would just use big, heavy clamps, and I would just clamp it to the frame, and that's how I would do it every day to ventilate it. And this is how we do it now, but... So these are different improvements that we've done. We've added a beam across the top in the center just for my peace of mind. And especially when you walk in there and your roof is kind of doing this. And now you can go somewhere for a while if you need to and not worry about having to shovel off the snow constantly. And then you can tie your plants to it. So that's been nice to have that in there. And then I added some of that bird netting to the front of it because the cat was always sneaking in there every time I would ventilate it and digging up my carrots. And so that keeps the cat out. And then in the back, one year we had a mudslide come down the hill and take out the back part of the greenhouse. So what we did was we got some guardrail posts. That's what you're looking at the picture on the top right. And we found them free. We stacked those up and made a wall in the back about 4 feet tall. And so that's helped keep the mud and the snow from collapsing it again. And then we put rain gutters on there to grow plants in. And it is nice to have the rain gutters, but I will tell you, unless you have a drip system, they dry out like that. And so you have to constantly be watering everything that's in your rain gutters. And the best thing of all that I found online is that automatic vent. And so it opens the back half moon vent now automatically. It has wax in there that melts during the summer when it's really hot, and it opens it. And then in the evening when it cools, it hardens back up and it closes the window. And so you can do that on a top window too if you have a greenhouse like that. And I believe it's called Avent, A-V-E-N-T. I think that's the name. It's been so many years, but you can just look up automatic greenhouse vent and you should be able to find one. It's well worth it, trust me, because you can go away and not have to babysit your greenhouse all the time. And then we added the 20-foot long metal roll-up bar and the fan. The fan is run by a little solar panel, just a cheap little solar panel from online. That's an old truck fan that's wired out to the solar panel. And so it only comes on when the sun's hitting the solar panel, so that's perfect. The fan keeps air going and helps with pollination and all sorts of things. And then we were afraid that we might get a big wind burst or something and blow our plastic away. So we put heavy-duty string, and I know that picture doesn't show at the bottom left, but it kind of looks like your shoelaces. We put little eyelet screws all along the base of the frame, and so you go across, turn, go back, across. So the strings are crossing each other in between each hoop, and so that's holding the plastic down in case, there ever was some kind of a big downburst. And then I did put a watering system in there. I tried. I took it out because it didn't work very well. So if anybody has suggestions on that, I don't know. It just sprayed water all over my walkways instead of on my plants. I don't know if I drilled the holes the wrong direction or what. So anyway. All right. So back to the greenhouse again now, the original one here. You want to have your plastic on before it starts freezing outside. So that's going to be sometime in October. Just keep that in mind. And once you put the plastic over top of your plants now think that they are in another 1.5 zones south. So if you're in a zone 5 now, your plants now think they're in a zone 6.5, just by adding that one thing, okay? Now this is the best part of it all. You've got everything growing in there. You started in July, okay? You've hung up all your other garden tools from out in the garden, and you're done out there. Everything's dead. Now you don't have to do anything else in your greenhouse. In November, you don't have to water. You don't have to water anymore, okay? All you're doing is just going in there and harvesting. And I just think that's just wonderful, personally. And that's because there's such low evaporation because you've got covers, which I'm about to show you in there, and high water tables. And you're going to add your floating row covers, which are these right here. But before you do that, you have to make something called a wicket right here. This is number 9 wire, comes from the hardware store in big spools. So what you want to do is you want to measure your beds and make this the width of your bed, okay? And then the length of the legs, kind of depends, but basically what you want to do is you want to have this 12 inches above the soil, not above the plant, but above the soil. So if this table is my soil level, I want it 12 inches above that. To give room, head space, and things for the plants and for drooping and things like that, okay? So that's how you measure these out. So make those up. And also, make sure you put them in your hoop house before the ground freezes. Yeah, that's a note to self. All right. So now, before it starts freezing in the greenhouse, usually sometime in November, you're going to add your frost blanket, okay? That's this one here. So you're tucking them in. This is your second cover, and this is the secret, and this is what most people don't know, okay? This is what's going to keep them going all winter long. So now that you have added this cover over top of all the plants, your plants now think they're another 1.5 zones south. So now they've gone from a 6.5 to an 8. Isn't that amazing? I think it's amazing. It's a miracle, whoever thought of all of this. And I always get this question too. Why don't you just buy a thicker blanket? Because actually the plants will freeze and then they thaw out during the day, which is another miracle in itself. But anyway, the reason being, Elliot Coleman did experiments on that, and he tried thicker blankets. And according to his research, it only makes it 2 degrees warmer underneath the fabric, but it lets in less light, which means more soil freezing, which means more damage. And I thought that was interesting. So for 2 degrees, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to do I'm going to do this one right here, which is the 0.55 ounce Agribon AG19. Isn't that amazing? So now your plants think they're in a zone 8. That's just an experiment there that I did. Same day, it wasn't a sunny day, but it was 21 outside, and it was, is it 53? Yeah, inside the greenhouse. And that's not even under the covers. Under the covers, you're going to add probably another 10 degrees. Easy. And then, here's something else that I have learned, is to make sure that you're up there harvesting in the middle of the day when everything's thawed out. Don't go up there bright and early in the morning and try to pick a salad, because everything's going to be frozen, including your covers, especially if it's been a really, really cold night. These will be frozen solid. And if you try to move them, you'll rip them. Okay, you can see that these do tear pretty easily, okay, see? And you will cause a lot of damage to your plants. So wait until things thaw out in the middle of the day, and then go up there and harvest what is that you need. Okay, yeah, I didn't want to forget to mention that. If you know that there's going to be negative temperatures coming in, it's going to get really, really cold, go out there and put some old sheets over top of everything. You're going to need some extra protection, or you'll have a lot of damage. It'll take a long time for it to come back. And if that cold weather is going to last for a week or something, just leave the covers on. Now, if it does warm up during the day and you go in there, oh man, it's like 70, 80 degrees in here, take the covers off and let your plants air out, okay? But don't forget to put everything back on that night, or you're going to be sorry. Write it down or something like that. But you can survive those really cold negative temperatures if you cover everything enough. You may need to put 2 or 3 covers. In fact, go get a big old bag of those sheets, you know, the sheet rags you can get at the thrift stores for $2. Keep them in your greenhouse and just keep them accessible and keep them ready so you can throw them over top of stuff if you need to. Just some more temperatures there in December. Like I mentioned before, the plants need the light. It's not the heat. They need light, okay? It doesn't mean that, oh, I don't get any sun. It doesn't have to be a sunny day. There's still light coming in there as long as you keep the snow off. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go up there every single day. I did the first year because I was so excited, but you don't have to do that. You can go inside with a broom and kind of hit the top of it, and it should slide right off. If it's not sliding off, go outside and use your broom. Or somebody said a big squeegee on a stick one time. I thought that was a good idea, and pull the snow off like that. Do not let the snow just pile up for 3 or 4 feet outside your greenhouse, right directly where your plants are. Because you know that sun is just barely coming across the top of the tree or top of the mountain or whatever, and it's casting a shadow down like this. And if you have a big pile of snow right here and your plant is way down here, it's not going to get any light. So if you're shoveling that snow, shovel it far away as away from the greenhouse as you can get it, or better yet, if you have a snow blower, blow it far away from the greenhouse. This is from Elliot's book. I just thought it was fascinating that it's 20 degrees outside, or 28, and 70 under the fabric. And that's in January. All right, so what to do if you can't build a greenhouse or you can't do this? And by the way, when we first did this, I know it was many years ago, but it was $500 is what it cost us. And so when I looked into possibly doing another one, it was going to be around $1,000. That's not bad for something that's a 12 by, it's now 24 feet long, a 12 by 24 foot structure for $1,000 that you built yourself that you can grow 365 days a year in is not bad. Because when you start looking online at kits, greenhouse kits are very expensive. Not only that, but a lot of the kits that you buy do not come with framing for doors. It's just the hoops, and then you have to do all your own framing. So you got to add that in there too. And a lot of them are sold out, and they take months and months and months to get here. You had a question? I don't know about those. I haven't seen them. Does anybody know about the ones they sell at Pro X greenhouse? They're expensive. Do you know, are they good quality, or do they work well? Yeah? $10,000 or $12,000? Wow. Are they covered in plastic, or what are they made out of? Like the bicarb or polycarbonate panels? Yeah. I don't know about that. I like the plastic personally because I can roll it up and down, and if I want to, I can roll the whole thing over in the month of August and let everything just air out and all of that. If I want to do it, I can take it down if I want to, and I don't know. All right, so ways to improvise. This is easy. I'm telling people, anybody can do this. A kid can do this. This is literally 4 boards, 4 2x4s nailed together with a cattle panel put over the center. Throw a piece of plastic over it, and there you go. You've got yourself a greenhouse. Get yourself some of this cover, get some wire, and there you go. Okay? Anybody can do that. I'm telling you, kids could do that. Look online. It's all over. This is popular now. It's all over the internet. People are really wanting to learn how to do this kind of stuff, so I already talked about that one. That's the one my little boy built me at that time. These are more ideas. If you don't want to build a structure that you can walk into, just get some straw bales. Put a window over the top or put a door over the top. Put your cover inside there. Just make sure that you're letting the light in. Keep the snow off of it so that the light can get to the plants, and vent it during the day if it's getting really hot in there. Because remember, these are winter plants. They like it cold. So I've had people ask me before on what do you do with your greenhouse besides just the winter gardening? Do you use it for other things? Well, the very first years you saw from some of the pictures, I used the whole greenhouse just for planting winter plants because I didn't know and I wanted to try everything. I had so much food. I was giving it away to people all the time. And then I realized I don't need all of that. What I need is a space to grow other things too. And so this is what I've done. I've figured out how to grow all month long, or each month what I grow. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start in January, the beginning of the year. And how do you use this greenhouse all year round for all of your growing needs? So the picture there on the left is the winter garden. So what I do now, and by the way, if you're just now starting out and you're just building one, make sure the long side of your greenhouse is facing south, because you want as much light as possible, okay? So the picture there on the left is the winter bed, and that is on the front of the greenhouse facing south, the closest one that can possibly be to any winter light that you could get. And so the picture on the top right there, I wanted to show you that because that's just showing you the carrots that are still in there in January, and it's also showing you celery. So what you do before it starts frosting, so sometime in September, dig up your celery plants, put them in your greenhouse, and cover them with your frost blanket, and you're going to have celery all year long. You can cut off of it, it'll keep coming back, and then you can take the celery plants and put them back out in the garden in the spring. So now if you think about it, what do you have growing in there now? You've got onions, right? You've got carrots, you've got celery, you can put potatoes in there if you want to, you can put turnips and beets and all the greens that you could ever imagine. Doesn't that sound like a pretty good salad or a big pot of soup that you could make just from walking into your greenhouse? It's pretty amazing. So in January, these are the things that I start. Celery takes forever to grow, so I start that early. I've got a few pink Chinese celery plants back there that are fun to grow, that actually grows pink celery. And by the way, I sell it at the farmer's market, and people buy my celery, and they're pretty big size plants. But one lady came and she complained to me one time, and she says, "I don't like your celery." I said, "Well, why not?" "Well, they're little and they're really strong." And I said, "Well, they're garden celery plants, homegrown. They're not like commercially farmed where the stalks are humongous and mostly just filled with water or whatever. I said, these are really, like one little piece of celery will do you compared to having 3 stalks or whatever, because the taste is stronger. So don't expect, if you're going to do celery, I'm just trying to explain to you, don't expect these gigantic, huge, big stalks like you're going to see in the grocery store. But don't be disappointed, because the taste is there. The taste is wonderful. And then the sweet potatoes I already mentioned. Lettuce and spinach, you can start that early because you can put that out in your greenhouse. In fact, you should already have that stuff growing, even outside right now, lettuce and spinach. Okay, so what's going on in the greenhouse in February? Just winter stuff is growing in there. This is just a sample of other things that I've grown, and were all on the list there at the beginning. And then what do I start in my house? By seed, the eggplant, the peppers, and the tomato. Or in January, you pick. It just kind of depends on when you want to start and how many times you want to transplant and how big you want your plants to be when you put them out. But this is just what I do. So that's February. And usually by the end of February, you're going to take all your covers off because it's getting really warm in there. And the plants need the circulation of the air, and they need as much cold as they can get now. Yep. And this is about the time when you're going to start watering too, at the end of February, beginning of March. Start watering again. So if you think about it, what did you have to do all winter long? Eat. Shovel snow, I know. It's a small price to pay, though, to be independent, isn't it? If you think about the way things are heading, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a fearmonger. But you all, I think we're all on the same page in this area. Be smart and think, okay, do I want to shovel snow and have food, or do I want to sit on my couch and hope that I can go to Walmart and get food? So in March, you're still sowing some seeds. I'll show you next. But that's what it looks like up there. Well, it's April now, but I took these this year in March because I just wanted to show you there. See all the snow still outside on the left there? But I'm venting it because it's warm in there. And the other thing I wanted to show you there in the foreground of that picture there on the left is broccoli. I know it didn't show up really well, but some of my winter plants were already done, so I took them out and threw them to the chickens, which gave me space to put broccoli in there because it does fine in the cold, and then when it warms up enough outside, I'll transplant them out. So that's me still using the winter bed to grow my spring stuff now. When the winter plants are done, I'll pull them out and put stuff in there. And then the picture on the top right is an experiment that I did. So that bed on the very end is in the center, and that's where the peppers go because it's the warmest place. So what I did around August was I took a bunch of lettuce and spinach and different things like that, greens, mostly lettuce though, and I sprinkled them in the soil around the pepper plants, and they came up like crazy because it's really warm in August. And the peppers are still growing in there and maturing and everything like that. And I thought, I'm going to just try a whole bunch of different varieties of lettuce and see how they do this winter. So when the peppers were done, I just broke them off and left them in because otherwise if I would have pulled them out, it would have disturbed all the lettuce plants that I have in there right now. And I covered them up, and I've got all these different varieties, like 9 or 10 different varieties of lettuce in there now. And a couple of them didn't do as well, but now that the days are warming up a little bit, there's more light, they're taking off like crazy. I have 9 or 10 different varieties of lettuce in there now that I did not have before, and I put them all with the peppers because my winter bed was full. So do you understand how I'm using different spaces in there? And I just put this cover over them. That's all I did. I didn't do anything special. That's just a picture of what it looked like in 2018. So if you keep a path dug to your front door, or you have a snow blower or something like that, or if you have to hire the neighbor kid, keep a pathway to your door. I have a friend that did not do that because it was a lot of work, and they lost plants. They never went in there and did really anything with it. But it just depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to get out of your greenhouse. But if you can keep up with it, and the other thing is, don't put your greenhouse like a mile away. Try to put it as close to your house as you can so you don't have to dig a path that long to get out to it. So it's more doable for you. So in March, these are just things then that I would start. Peas can be going outside. Your beans, beets, cabbage, and broccoli and cauliflower can all be started in March in little packs or however you want to do those. And then you can put them in your greenhouse until the frost is done, and then you put them outside. Okay, and then in April, April or May. It kind of depends on the weather. But you're still harvesting your winter stuff. You can see it's kind of getting a little bit sparse there on the left-hand side. But on the right, you can see it. I've showed you that picture before, but that's hardening off the plants, getting ready to put them in the greenhouse. In the dirt, I should say. Yeah. So you can use that time to prepare your beds for your other things that will be going in there. Now, these were pictures of probably the first couple of years when I didn't have anything in the center beds. You can see it's just dirt, and so I'd go in there, I'd put the amendments and then till it in. I can't do that now because it's full of carrots and celery and different things and lettuce. But this just shows you kind of where the progression of how we've gone from where we were to where we are now. And then I will also go ahead and start the winter squash and zucchinis and things like that just right there in the greenhouse, in the pots in April or May. And then those are the things that will be starting to go into the ground, or at least getting ready, probably putting them into these flats right here. Your peas, your beans, corn, things like that. And then in June, by the time June comes around, if not before that, depending on the temperature in your greenhouse, your winter stuff is done because it's hot. They don't like it hot. So you can see that they start to go to seed. So what I do is I will take one plant, make sure I label it Mizuna or Tokyo Bacana, whatever it is, and I'll just tie it up to one of the ribs there, and keep that one plant and let it flower and keep those seeds for next year. And I'll rip everything out and compost it. And then that winter bed is empty for about a month, maybe. That's it. So it gives you a little bit of time to put some more stuff in there and amend it and get it ready for July. But that just shows you what's going on in the greenhouse, in the other parts of the greenhouse there. You should have at least cherry tomatoes by then. If you're doing, the strawberries were done in the rain gutters. And I don't remember what else we have going on in there. Oh yeah, peppers and sweet potatoes. And then you're saving seed, like I already mentioned before. I don't remember. I think those are carrot seeds on the top right, and then chard on the bottom right. And then what's going on in July is here comes your winter planting time. First part of July or in the middle of July, sometime there in July, you start planting for winter. And I know you don't really want to think about it, but trust me, just do it because it's worth the effort. You'll be so glad, you know, and everybody else is wishing that they had something to eat. So what I used to do on that bed there on the left, you can see, was I would do all the spinach in one section, and then I would do all the chard in one section, and then all of the bok choy in one section. That's what I used to do. And then every time I wanted to harvest or have a salad or whatever, I'd have to go up there and flip the cover up off the whole entire row to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. So then I got really smart, and this is what I did. So now I just put a little bit of everything in one section. So now I do 2 rows of spinach, 2 rows of peas or whatever, 2 rows of onions, 2 rows of lettuce, all of that in one section. And then in 2 weeks, I'll go down here and I'll do the exact same thing again. And then in 2 weeks, I'll do that again. And so now when I go up there to harvest something, I just lift up the cover and everything's just right there in that one section ready for me. I don't have to move any more covers. And then when that's all harvested, the next time you just move the cover from this other little section here and harvest from there. And in fact, it lasts really, really, really well. So I usually go up there and harvest enough for a week and put it in a grocery, sack or whatever in the refrigerator. But you can see the peppers there, that's a horizon orange, by the way, really sweet, sweet, good peppers. Okay, and then in September, do 2 more plantings. That's just another sample of what we've grown in there. October is when you do your final planting. Question, yes. Go back 1. This one? Okay. Yep. Okay, this one. And then November. The turnips, by the way, the Hakurei turnips are so sweet. They're like apples. You can just take it out and eat it like an apple. If you've never tried a turnip, that would be the one to try. So you can see the variety of plants that you can grow. Such a variety on top of your carrots and your celery that's already in there. Like I said, you could leave potatoes in there too if you don't want to put them in a cellar or something like that. It's just a sample of all the different colors and the variety of things there in December. And how nice would it be not to have to can all your beets, or not to have to can all of your carrots, or not to dry all of your onions, because they're there and they're fresh. Less work, right? So people ask me, are the plants really growing, or are they just staying alive in there? So what would you say? What would be your guess? Nobody wants to say. So I went back and I looked at the pictures there, and that's the same year from October to March, 6 months, and then the same year, that was 16, and that's 2017. Same angle, same bed, same plants, 6 months, the coldest part of the year during the winter. So what do you think? Are they growing? They are. I mean, look at all the green, especially the bottom left-hand picture. Look how small they are in October, and then look at March, how huge they are. And you can see all the snow outside. I'm telling you, is anybody doing this right now? Wow. I am telling you, when you do this the first year, and there's this much snow outside, and you walk in there and you see all this green stuff, you are going to fall over. You're going to say, whoa, I can't believe this. This is incredible. This is a miracle, because it really is. It's unbelievable. Okay, so anyway, that's the end of this part 2 of but I want to take questions now as I'm preparing for part 3, which is the wild edible plants, and it's only like 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes.
What is the average width of your bed?
Okay, what's my average what? Width? Okay, yeah, I think my beds are around 2.5 feet wide. So I now only have the 2 12-inch walkways on either side. So and it's still 12 feet wide. So if you figure out the math on that. I made the center bed. Yeah, I can probably go back and find that picture of that. Yeah, I made the center bed just one big bed. I took out that whole walkway because I just wanted the growing space. Maybe I don't have it. Yeah, see it in the center there, the top left? That's what I did. And so I can access it from both sides. You have to walk all the way around it, or you could put a stepping stone in the center and step over it. But I mean, it's only a 20-foot four. And the other thing that I would recommend too, leave yourself a little bit of a step or a walkway when you first step into it, so you can kind of move around when you get in there. I mean, I first had my beds come all the way up to the door, where you're walking in and you're stepping on plants. I don't recommend that. Okay, any other questions? Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, when you have kids, you already have a full-time job. When you homeschool, you have a full-time job. When you live in the mountains and the wilderness, you have a full-time job. So I don't know how many full-time jobs I have. And then I do this on top of that. What was that? There's 4 of us. Yeah. Yeah, this is it for me. This month, I have one more class and that's it. I cut it off. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Right, yeah, I get that question. It's easier now because my kids are older. But usually what I try to do is go out early before the sun comes up over the trees, because you should actually have everything watered by then anyway. So if you can get out there and get any kind of weeds pulled, and people ask me about the weeds too. I don't have a lot of weeds because everything's in a raised bed and I spot water. If I had a sprinkler going, I'd have weeds everywhere. I would just be weeding all the time. So I don't have that issue.
So can I do that same thing with drip?
Yeah, drip system, same thing. So I don't have a lot of weeds to mess with. I water early in the morning before the sun comes out. It's better that way. I try to do as much as I can before it gets hot. And then I go inside and do whatever it is that I need to do during the hottest part of the day. I mean, there's some days I don't get outside But if you're doing a lot of your prep work in the fall anyway, you shouldn't have to spend too much time out there. The setup, the initial getting the plants in and all of that takes time, and you're just gonna have to tell your family, look, you either have to come out and help me, or you're not gonna see me for a few days. But if you can get your little ones helping you, that does help too. But don't start big and huge. Don't be overwhelmed. Start small if you need to. But yeah, it's a commitment. I mean, don't think that you can just plant your garden and then go away all summer long on vacation. Unless you have a wonderful self-watering system or neighbors that are looking after everything for you, but that's not really fair to do that to them. I've left my garden without watering it or anything in the hot summer probably for a week. And it was struggling when I got back, but that's just how it is. Any other questions on that part of it? Yeah. Oh, gophers. I'm glad you asked that. Yes. We used to have lots of them, and they would get into everything. And we tried everything, all those little contraptions. But anyway, the best thing that I found that works is getting a cat. Outdoor cat. Yeah. What was that? Yes. Idea for a gopher.
With the gophers, were they, especially if you have where they're growing all over, digging up all over?
I think we're getting you a microphone. Hold on so that everybody can hear, because this is good information.
Yeah, is that close enough?
He's turning it on for you. Hold on 1 minute.
Hello, yeah.
There you go.
All right, I can hear myself now. It's gophers, where they underground, they dig all these holes. It takes them a long time to dig all those holes. Down below, they got their dens under there. Those are hard to get to. So you take 2 small rods, you get your can of propane and a bottle of oxygen. And you run oxygen in one, propane in the other, in 2 long tubes, bring it down, go out away from you. Then you take a piece of just pipe, 2-inch pipe, so long, and you run the 2 into that, and somehow you fasten it on, weld it in there or something. And then when you're walking on the ground, you come up to the hole where they breathe, or you move the dirt out of the way so you can see the holes that go underground. You stick that piece of pipe in there, get back away from it, hold the rods out there away from you, and then turn on the oxygen and the propane. The gas will go down there. It'll run out in all directions that all their holes go to and into their big cavity where their dens are, where they winter. And then you get yourself a barbecue thing. You push the barbecue deal and it makes that spark and lights up your barbecue. Guess what? You touch that button off, make certain you got a face shield and some good earmuffs, because it'll take a big area depending on how long you let it run. And it goes boom, really loud.
Great.
And the dirt will pop up all over the place. Stand on something that you're not standing over a hole. Be safe, because it'll hurt you. It will hurt you if you're not careful. But it blows them all up. And then you go to another hole and you do that in the whole area around you. Now, it took them years to dig that out. The next door neighbor gophers, they're not going to be coming back over. Otherwise, when you poison them, they come right back over and they got a whole brand new home. This way, there is nothing. And it takes them a couple of years before they get even close to what is down there now.
I've heard they're territorial too, and once you get them, they like more of them won't come, but that explains why.
Well, if you blow them
If
up
you're,
like that,
well,
they have
yeah,
no-
but you're destroying the tunnel too. If you're digging in the tunnel and setting
yeah,
traps, you're
no
still
place to
destroying the
breathe,
tunnel.
No
Yeah.
homes to tunnel through.
Or you can get a cat.
Yeah. Well, that, if you want it done now.
Thank
that
you. That
does it.
I never heard of that. There you go. So there's another idea on the gophers.
Go on.
So yeah, once we got an outdoor cat, our gophers all disappeared.
Used to see it on YouTube. They call it the Gophinator.
Oh my.
But you can make your own.
Okay, we had another question. Do you want to be on the microphone? Okay.
Strawberries that get are they wasps or hornets or bees? They're not bees, but the strawberry plants last year were swarming.
Well, bees will eat the strawberries. Yeah, I've seen that. You can put covers over them. But use the insect covers, like 0.45 ounce covers. Yeah, the lightweight ones. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions on the winter gardening or season extension or anything like that? These classes are always interesting because you learn so much from other people. Okay. So I need a little book. Autumn, can you bring me a little book real quick? One of my little books. So I must, first of all, explain that I am a self-taught herbalist, and by definition, herbalist being I study herbs and plants, okay? I need to make that a disclaimer because I don't go around trying to claim that I'm some, like, well-educated person in this department. I'm self-taught. So anyway, this book came about because I love to hike, and I wanted to have a little book that I could carry with me all the time that was small and that would tell me what I could eat way up in the mountains and how to use each plant. And I also wanted something that was just for this area and not, I'm carrying around a book for plants that I can eat in Florida because that's no good to me. And so that's why I wrote this book. And first it was just going to be about plants that you could eat. And then I decided I need to put in there how to use the plants. So that sent me on another mission of more research and study and trial and error on what these plants are good for. Because I don't know about you, but I kind of like to be able to treat my own self as much as I can and my family too, and not be rushing to the hospital for anything, especially if you don't know if you can even get there anymore. So I am not going to be held accountable if you eat a plant and get sick. That's my disclaimer, okay? You can read the whole disclaimer. It's in the front of the book if you'd like to, but I have to put that on there. So if you're going to start collecting plants, collect them in the morning. That's the best time to do it before the sun starts hitting them. And then do something with the plants right away. So that means you're either going to put them into some olive oil to infuse them, or you're going to dry them in a dehydrator, but do something with them. Hang them out in the garage or something so they can dry. All right? And if you're going to put them, I'll go over that on the next one. So as you're going through the book, or if you're studying about plants, you'll see these terms. So I want to go over these terms and explain what these mean. A decoction is basically a tea that you're making with the plant part, but you're using the harder plant parts like the roots. Okay, that's the decoction. Ointments are salves that you can make. Okay, and basically what you're doing is you're adding beeswax, and you can look online to find recipes to do this. But what you're doing if you're going to make some kind of an ointment or a salve is you're taking the plant and you're putting it in some type of oil. I just use olive oil. And if you're going to use a live plant, you take the plant directly from outside and you're going to put it in olive oil, you need to get that water off of the plant. So what you need to do if, you can do this. You can run a slow cooker and plug that in all night and just let the water evaporate off the plant that way. I've put fresh plants into olive oil before and they rot, and I didn't understand why, and that's why. It's got the water in there. But if you dry the plant first, you can just put it directly into the olive oil and save it that way. So what you're doing is you can let it sit in here. This has probably been in here for a couple of years now, and it's just infusing it. Now there are certain plants, I will tell you this, there are certain plants where you can only extract the properties from that plant with alcohol. So you can do your own research on that, okay? I can't go into every single detail about every single plant, but I'm just throwing that out there. And the other way that you can use the plants would be a poultice. Is there anybody that's not familiar with a poultice and never heard of it before? So all of you know how to use a poultice? Okay, I'll go over it then. If you come to the plant walk on May 22, we're going to have a whole booth on making poultices. So a poultice is basically you're going to take your dried plant, let's just say clover, you're going to put it in a bowl with a little bit of water and mix it up and make a paste. And after you make that paste, you're going to put it on your sore, whatever it is that you're trying to treat. That's a poultice. And maybe you've heard of charcoal. I thought I had it up here. A charcoal poultice, a lot of people use those for all sorts of poisonings and things like that. Yeah, extracts poisons. And then teas. Everybody's familiar with how to make a tea. Basically, you just take some of the plant, pour some boiling water, and let it sit there. And then a tincture. So the tinctures, there's 2 different ways that I've found the best. I've heard of people making them with apple cider vinegar. I don't know. I've never done that, but I've heard that you can. But the 2 different ways that I make tinctures are with alcohol. Now, this is not rubbing alcohol, okay? This is like vodka or 80 proof, whatever, 90 proof. Or vegetable glycerin. There's 2 different ways to make tinctures, okay? Now, according to the research that I have done, if you are going to make an alcohol tincture, you can evaporate the alcohol off of it by putting it into, like your little dropper full, putting it in your cup and putting boiling water on it, let it sit, and just in seconds or a few minutes, all the alcohol will evaporate off of it. If you cover it, though, it will not be able to evaporate, so you're still drinking the alcohol that's in the tincture. If you're going to make a tincture with alcohol, it will last you forever. It will never go bad. If you're going to make it with the vegetable glycerin, which is probably better for the kids, this is elderberry, it'll last maybe a year, maybe a little bit more if you put it in a refrigerator. And it'll be a lot sweeter, obviously. And the other thing is, if you come on May 22, the naturopathic doctor that's going to be there, I'm trying to think, he runs the Life Tree Wellness Center in Coeur d'Alene. Anyway, he makes all his own tinctures and things. He's going to talk about that, so he may mention this, I'm not sure. But there are certain properties from plants that are only extractable with alcohol. So if there's something special that you're trying to get, say, from your echinacea plant, and you're trying to get it by doing it with a glycerin, it's not going to get out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And again, just do your own research on that and figure those out for yourself. So I just want to highlight a few plants that people are usually familiar with. I don't know if you've seen the bearberries, also known as kinnikinnick, but they climb everywhere. Just these green vines go everywhere, and then they have the little red berries on them, and that's what all of these are. And if you can dry them and keep them, those are really, really good for urinary tract infections. You can drink it as a tea for diabetes and things like that. And I know that everybody knows what clover is, so I wanted to include that. But most people don't know how good it is for you. So if you're going to get maybe 3 plants and that's all you can get, clover is on my top 3 list of plants to get. As soon as they start coming out, dry them in your dehydrator, dry them in the back window of your car, put them in your stove and dry them. A trampoline outside works great to dry plants on, by the way, but they will blow away sometimes. But did you know that there was protein in them? I mean, who would have thought, just in these plants? And also, I will tell you that clover is excellent for burns. And I know from experience, many, many times, how many of you have thrown a log in the fireplace and hit your hand on it? Maybe it's just me. But anyway, I burned myself before, and the first thing, what is it that normally as a kid you learn as you're growing up? What do you reach for? What plant do you usually reach for if you're burned? Aloe vera, right? And so I was trying that, and it was stinging, and it wasn't doing anything. And I thought, there's got to be something that I can use. And so I real quick grabbed my little book, and I looked in the back under burns, and I saw clover, and I said, oh, cool, because I don't have everything memorized, what every plant is good for. So I took some clover, and I put it in a little bowl with some water and mixed it up and made a paste. And I put that paste on there, and I just sat it there, and the pain was gone immediately. And I kid you not, it was gone immediately. Did not hurt at all. And then I just took a little plastic baggie and put it over my hand, put one of those black stretchy gloves on it and left it on there all night, and in the morning took it off and there was nothing there. Like no scar, no pink, nothing. Yeah. Yes. I've used it on multiple different types of burns. Yeah. Clover is amazing. So I keep clover with me. I keep certain herbs with me. In fact, I'll just show you. This is kind of my little kit that I keep with me in my backpack all the time. So this is what I have in there. I have comfrey that I've powdered. I have yarrow, and I'll leave these up here. You can come up and look. And then I have a mixture of plantain and comfrey, and I'll go over these so that you'll know why I have these. Here's my clover. And then I also keep a little bottle of colloidal silver. If you're not familiar with silver, get to know colloidal silver. I have a list back there of things that silver is good for. So I keep that in there. And then I also have pine sap, which I apologize, I'm out of pine sap. But you can render your own if you want to learn how to do that. Come talk to me afterwards. I'll teach you how to do that. So I have it in a chapstick tube, and then I have a little pine sap in here. And that is good for, it's also drawing. It draws out, any kind of poison that you might have in there, infections. It'll seal wounds, and it heals wounds. I know a man, his testimony's online. He's not really a friend of mine, but an acquaintance, who was in a really bad truck accident, tore up the whole side of his face, and he was determined to only use pine sap to heal it, and he did. Pine sap, pine sap, pine sap. Healed his whole face. It was bad, too. So anyway, pine sap. All right, so that's just a little extra thing there. So that's the clover. And then comfrey. How many of you are familiar with comfrey? Comfrey, if you don't have it, get it. I'm not sure if you can buy really the live plants, but if you have a friend that has it, get a baby from them. That's how I got mine. Comfrey is also known as knit bone because it actually heals broken bones. I know 2 people that have had broken bones that have healed it just with comfrey. Comfrey leaves, wrapping it around your broken ankle or whatever it is, healed it. Pretty amazing. Purifies your blood. And the comfrey is what we use in our salves. We had a lady come to the farmer's market with a huge ulcer on her leg. And she said, I don't know what to do with this. I've been to the doctor so many times. They keep giving me all these ointments for my leg and nothing's working. I said, you need to put comfrey on it. I gave her some dried comfrey plant that I had. I told her how to make a poultice to put on it. And I said, when it stops oozing and all of that, take that off and then put that salve on there. She came back in about a month and she had no spot there. She showed me. She goes, look, I wanted to show you this. And I said, I'm so excited. Thank you for coming back and telling me, because you don't always get to hear, how things work with people. So that was exciting to hear that. And I have another friend who had some kind of a rash on her face all the way around her mouth, a bright red rash. I don't know what she had been putting on it, but whatever it was wasn't working. So I gave her some of my comfrey salve, and it went away. It's gone. So psoriasis, eczema, comfrey is good to know about. I put dandelion on there. Now, I know everybody knows about how to find a dandelion or whatever, and I know they're noxious weeds, but dry some, get a couple jars of them, have them on hand, because what I have learned, and this is all over the internet, you can do your own research, dandelion tea blocks the spike proteins. I don't want to say too much because we're live, but you guys know what I mean. If you can get your hands on elderberries, okay, dry them. This used to be full until I started making tinctures, but they dry really, really small. And this is a elderberry tincture there, made out of vegetable glycerin. Elderberries are sold in the health food stores as Sambucus. Maybe you've heard of Sambucus. Very expensive if you're going to get the good stuff, like $10 an ounce. So get your own. You can buy them online if you want to. Make your own elderberry syrup. Have it on hand. Take it all winter long. It'll keep you well. Okay? Very good for your immune system. I put this on there because I think they're beautiful and they're way up in the mountains. If you ever go hiking, the fireweed, they're really tall, purple flowers, and now you know you can eat them. The whole entire plant. What I did one time was I took this little tiny squirt bottle full of dressing, and I was determined that I was going to eat on my backpacking trip just whatever I could forage around for. I had this big old green salad, and I had my little dressing. It was fantastic. Everybody else was eating like dehydrated beans, I had this salad. Anyway, sorry. Mullein, that's hard to miss. I think everybody knows what those big, tall mullein plants are. They don't form their flowers and get really tall spikes until the second year. But anyway, if you're going to collect the little yellow flowers, they take time, lots and lots of time. You would not believe how many little yellow flowers went into this. And the reason is because only some of them will bloom on a stalk. So you stop your car and you pick about 5, and then you go to the next one and you pick about 5. And then the next day there's a few more of them on there. But the reason I wanted to keep those is because they're good for ear infections, and just never knew, somebody may have an ear infection someday, and all you do is you soak it in olive oil, and then you drop the olive oil in your ear. Yeah. You mean after they dry, after it dries? Yeah, I don't think there's any use for it after it dries. Well, that depends on if you want it again next year. If you want it next year, leave the plant, just cut the top part of it off. But if you're tired of it, because they will spread like crazy. They are known as a noxious weed.
The plant only lasts 2 years. Once it flowers.
Oh, they won't reflower?
No, but it spreads like crazy.
Oh, yeah, the babies come back. Okay. Oh, wow. He's saying that the seeds will last 20 years from one plant. I didn't know that. That's amazing. It's also known as the toilet paper plant.
First year you get a rosacea of just the leaf.
Yes.
And that is a good time to use the roots also for poultices.
Okay. Can everybody hear him? Okay.
And then the next year you get the spout with all the yellow flowers. And again, the leaves are still good for poultices.
Yep. Yep, dry them and crush them and put them in a jar. That's good, thank you. Like I said, I'm still learning. I have a long ways to go. But daisies, they grow everywhere you don't want them to, probably in your garden. But at least now you know you can eat them. And there's protein in them, which is kind of cool. And the rose hips are nice if you can get those. They do have seeds in them, so don't break your teeth on them. But they're very, very high in vitamin C. Look at that, 500 milligrams per little hip. And that's what forms after the flowers die off. And they're pretty sour, but... Now, service berries, if you can find these, you can use these just like blueberries. They taste like blueberries. You can can them up like blueberries, dry and make pies and jams and stuff with them, the service berries. And if you take them and if you eat them, they say it's just like eating a daily natural vitamin pill. That's how good they are for you. Stinging nettles, if you're not sure what it is, grab the plant and slap your arm and you'll know real quick if it's a stinging nettle or not. And then you'll have to look in this book, what do I do for a stinging nettle? No, I'm just kidding, I don't have that in there. But they're really tasty if you've never eaten them before. They taste like spinach. And once you steam them or cook them, or you can put them over a hot fire over the heat, the nettles will fall off, the stinging parts. So they taste like spinach. And they're really good for you too. Violets, easy to find, usually easy to identify, and I put them on here because little story about the violets. I was camping with another friend, and she tripped over her boiling pot of water all over her ankle in flip-flops or something. And so she put her foot in the creek real quick while I ran around and tried to find what I could find to make a poultice for her burn. And so wild violets, I found a huge patch of wild violets. And I forget, somebody else found something else right now, but I forget what else it was. It'll come to me later. But anyway, we made a poultice and covered her entire ankle with it, covered it with a big plastic bag that night, and in the morning there was nothing except the whole plant. She had a little quarter-size red mark on the bottom of her foot where the poultice didn't get. That was amazing. He was asking me flowers or leaves. You just use the whole plant. And plantain I like to include because if this is the only plant you can get, please get this one, okay? It's known as a medicine cabinet in a leaf. I'm going to...
Oh, the battery?
Because I'm almost done. Okay, yeah, I'll just use this one. So that's what they look like if you haven't seen them before. And as you rip the leaf apart and pull it apart, there'll be strings in it, identifying strings. It looks like it was sewn together, okay? It's kind of easy to identify. Once you've seen it once, you'll know. Just another identifying picture there. And I have a whole another list I want to show you here on what plantain is good for. This is just one slide. I have another slide. But look at all of those things, what it heals. And if you're making not a poultice, if you are making a salve, I would also put plantain in it. In fact, I could tell you out of all these things up here, I'd make a pile out of making a salve out of certain plants that are going to be good for everything. It'd be good for bleeding, for bites, for stings, for burns, everything all in one salve. But you can even make a tea with it for weight loss. So there's two different ways to use it, internally or externally. So internally means that you're going to have to either take it as a tea, or you can powder it in a little coffee grinder, like I did here, powder it, and put it in little capsules and take it that way. I do have a book back there called The Shepherd's Purse, and there's a chart in there that shows you by body weight how much of herbs you're supposed to take. So, be careful. Don't just go out and just start taking everything just because you heard, oh, Dawn said it's good. Okay, be smart about things. Don't make yourself ill or anything. But if you're going to use it externally, if you make a tea with it, you can soak your gauze in it and put it on your wounds that way, or make a poultice like I talked about before. These are just plants I recently learned about. These are not in the book, but I just thought you might want to look them up if you're interested. And the pictures are both of the rabbit tobacco, which is good for viruses and helping your immune system. And I think that's it. Yeah, I already went through all of that. So the books are available online, and they are around town here. I sell them over at Sharon's, different places, but anyway. So that's all I have for that. If anybody has questions you want to come and talk to me about, I'll hang around for a while I'm cleaning up. But I don't know, are there any announcements or anything like that? Yes?
I would like to thank Dawn for her time and her experience, and would like to thank all of you for coming. And she's gone to a lot of work, and so anyway, we'd just like to put out there's a little pitcher over there, empty pitcher, and if you feel like donating some money to her time for what she's done, it would probably be much appreciated. And also over here on the table, there's things that they have over here on the table, and at the end of the table, there's some free literature over there available, and I believe there's maybe some music over there. And also, I'd like to make you aware that on April 21st at 7 o'clock downtown at the Community Thrift Center, or the thrift store down there, there will be a 4-night seminar on serpentine prophecy. And I think you'd find it very interesting. There's some cards on the table if you're interested that you could pick up and read a little more about it. So if you're available for that, love to see you there. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. And